Hi, I'm Radhika. Welcome to my channel 9 to Thrive. This is my first video, and I'm going to be sharing with you an Excel template that goes through budgeting basics. This is very much how I started budgeting. So, looking at all my income, looking at my expenses, and then tracking it through the month to keep me in check. The whole Excel sheet is designed in a way that you can go as detailed or as less detailed or as vague as you'd like, just so that you get an idea of what your budget looks like and you actually have a plan to go towards instead of just wandering around with your money. Without an aim in mind. So let's get right to it. Let's start at the details page. Um, it gives you a small overview of what this sheet has to offer, and then all you need to do here is go in and fill out who you're budgeting for. So it can be for yourself, it can be for a couple or a family, and write down the number of earning members. In this case, it's two. Typical spenders on this income. So you can actually go in and write about 6 to 7 spenders if there's a family of 5 or 6 that are spending on this. I would recommend that this is just for your immediate family. So just, if there's a couple and their children or couple and their parents, so just 4 to 6 members is the optimal amount or optimal number of spenders for this particular sheet. If you do feel like you require something more, maybe you should leave us an email and we can work out another sheet or an addition to this sheet that can help you budget that better. So you can actually go in and fill out the names as much as you'd like, or you can leave it as wife, husband, child one, child two. So I'm just going to go in and fill out AAA, DDD, CCC. You can also do DDD just as a fourth member. I would also recommend going in and filling out all the different bank accounts that you do own, because it will come in hand later on when you're doing your tracking of expenses. So I use Monzo, a Revenue, an ICICI, and an HDFC bank. You can go up to 7 to 10 banks if you'd like. Onto This shouldn't take you typically more than 2 minutes. Onto the second sheet. Here, what I'm doing is writing down all the different incomes that I've got for the year. So I've got my own job, I've got my husband's job, and both of these are active forms of income. So for every hour that we work is what we receive, even though it's a salary that we're paid yearly. But if we stop working, we stop earning it, and that's what an active income is. The other sources that I've put in here, they're all passive sources of income, and there are lots more that you can include here if you do have passive sources of income. So these are kinds of incomes where you don't actually have to work for it for every hour that you earn. So maybe it is that you put in a huge amount of investment at the beginning. So this can be like a financial investment, or it can be a time investment, like this YouTube channel, for example. And or it can be like income from stocks, so the dividends or the returns that you get from stocks. That's a more financial investment that you're putting into your passive income. And once you do that, the next few years, once you start earning, you earn even if you're not putting in as much effort into it. And that's a great source of income. So if you have a combination of a active and a passive source of income, it makes for a really strong portfolio for yourself. So I highly recommend looking into different passive sources of income. You can follow my Instagram, and that will have it'll be giving you more information in a very digestible manner as to what these sources can be. But you can just look it up on Google and try and look at different passive sources to add to your income. Anyway, back to the sheet. There are two ways to fill this out. One is an annual input. So you can, if you know your annual income for the year, you just put in, say, 100,000 here. So I'm just going to change this amount so that you know how this works. So there's nothing on the Jan, Feb, March numbers at the moment, but as soon as I put 100,000, it kind of divides it by 12 and has monthly income put in. The same with my husband's job. If I put in 100,000, it puts the same amounts in there. The other way to do this is if you know your monthly amounts. If I know I earn $9,000 a month, I can put in 9,000 here, and that instead of putting it here. So I'll delete that one, and you can it kind of populates it through the year, and also totals up that amount for the year. um, One of the ways that the sheet is built is in case that you want to change your income in the middle of the year. So say in June I've got a pay rise, or I've changed my job. I can just kind of put in $10,000 here, and the rest will follow. So all of these will be 10,000 at any point. Here I can kind of put in my increased or reduced figure, or even customize each month if I'd like to go into as much detail, but you really don't need to. All you need to do is you can close this tab if you don't need to, and put in your annual inputs or your monthly inputs, and that kind of does the work for you. This shouldn't typically take you more than 5 minutes either, just because you would know your salary, or you would know your partner's salary, and you would kind of realize how much income you're getting from other sources. It can be a rough amount, doesn't really need to be very exact, but it gives you a good idea of what money you have to work with. Onto expenses. Now, this one I think would take a little longer. You can put in your rent, your utilities, insurance installments. I've given little notes where you can kind of, think of different kinds of insurance installments that you would have, or loan repayments that you could have, just to give you a starting point, and others. So I've left it up to interpretation as well, where you can customize this if you'd like. So if you don't want to call it rent, and if you want to call it mortgage, you're most happy to do that, and it doesn't really change anything on the sheet. These expenses, these fixed expenses, are ones that you can't just change in a jiffy. You can't suddenly decide, okay, from today, I'm going to cut my rent in half, because that's really not in your control. Or your insurance installments, for that matter, your loan repayments, you do have to pay those. So it is more of a long-term expense, or a long-term change. So if you do decide to move from one house to the other, where it's more rent controlled, or if it's a reduced price, you can choose to do that, and that does reduce your expenses. But generally, these fixed expenses are not a spur of the moment thing, which is why we're calling it fixed. Next up is the variable expenses. Now, these include all the things that you can really budget with. This is where you can make your real savings. So you've got your grocery, eating out, entertainment, where you go out for coffees or drinks with your friends, and for movies. All of those things can come in here. You've got travel, shopping, subscriptions, business, personal care, etc. So you've got all of these things here, and you can again rename them. You can delete some if they don't really apply to you. I simply suggest just simply clicking on the backspace or delete button and just removing them. What you can do is also open up the group, and it does expand to each month. So if you do want to go into that detail where you want to customize each month, you can do that. Now, remember, this is just a budget. It's not your actual expenses, so it can be a rough amount, and it can be what you're trying to achieve. It can be something that you're already doing, just a plan, or just how things are at the moment. I would suggest that in your first couple months, just look at how things are going, look at what you're spending on. Just tracking your expenses really helps with that, which is why I've created something for each month. So you can go into January as an example, and see that it pulls in your budgeted income, it pulls in your spend, so your budgeted spend, and then it pulls in what you're saving from it. So for example, you are receiving 17,000 in your household. You're spending only, that's a bit unrealistic. I'm gonna add some numbers to this. So maybe 1,000, maybe 3,000. That should kind of help us. You're spending about $7,000 from it, and you kind of save $10,000. Now, what you want to do just below in this light green area is write out what you're spending on. So the least you need to do is fill out your amount, and as soon as you change this amount, it kind of goes in and says, okay, my actual spending versus my spend is $2,400 lesser. So I'm doing really well. Whereas if you want, you can also go in and fill in a lot more. So you can fill out your expense category, which can be rent, eating out, shopping. You can actually just select from all of these, this drop down that you've got, which populates from your expenses. So if you fill in mortgage here, I can go in and see that there's no rent anymore. It's mortgage now, and you can just fill that out differently. Same thing with the bank account. You can actually just go and say, okay, I'm using Monzo to pay all my fixed expenses. So, I'm using Monzo and it's been spent by um, a what I like to do personally is, instead of writing, since it's just me and my partner, we've got, say, wife, husband, and then both. So these are all the expenses that we both share equally. So, for example, rent is something that we both share. So I'm just going to put that in both. If we go out for a brunch, it's both. It's not the husband or the wife. So I really like to have that category on here. So what this also does is, if you go over your spend, it brings you like a cute message saying, oh, you're spending more than your budgeted spend for the month, be careful. As soon as you remove that, you're spending less than the budgeted, saying, you're doing a good job. So this way you can go through each of the months, and it's fairly simple. Remember, all you actually need to fill out is the amount, so you're just tracking, but I highly recommend doing at least these two, if not more. It really helps you realize what you're spending on. So this kind of goes through for each of the months. You can find them in the hidden sheets here. Didn't want it to be very cluttered. So last thing we come on to is the analysis tab. Here you can actually see what you budgeted for versus what you're actually spending. So you can see that the budget is fairly simple because we've not really tweaked any of the other months. You can see January, which we filled out, stands at about 5,000 something, 5,400, and it's lower than what you budgeted. So let's go into Feb and just put in a number of 10,000 and see how that affects it. So if you go into the analysis tab, you can immediately see that you're going over budget. So it really helps you kind of keep a track of how many times over the year you're going over budget. And I find that really helpful to see, and what patterns there are on this. Another really cool chart, I think, is to see the Watch Your Savings Grow chart. So you can see how your savings are increasing every month. Now, this is a cumulative chart. So it says, okay, in Jan I saved 2,000. And in Feb I saved another 2,000. So Feb I've got 4,000. And you kind of see, if you don't dip into your savings and it's just sitting on in a bank account, how that savings growing over time. I find that really fascinating to watch, how every penny kind of counts. And bear in mind that this is just when your money is sitting in a bank account. It's not even when it's invested. Obviously, you'll see much better returns when it's invested in a ETF. Or I find that the easiest way to go, if I don't want to think about what I'm investing in, an S&P or a Nifty 50. I find that just easy to invest in every month. Take my money, put it into a ETF. I've committed $2,000 or 20 lakh to it. Just put in that amount every single month and watch that grow over time. The chart that I find really helpful is the budget versus actual spend category on each category. So I can see what I budgeted for each category and how much I've spent on it per year. So because obviously we filled out only $4,000 for January on this, you can see the mortgages, what we budgeted is way higher, but otherwise you can kind of see. So for example, we've spent too much on shopping. So we've got $5,000 there. You can see that the orange has spiked up, and you maybe think, okay, if it's so important to me, do I budget more for this, or I really need to cut back on my shopping? So you can think about it either way. I do think the expenses tab should not take you more than 15 to 20 minutes if you've got everything ready, and then you've got your tracker for each month that you can just open it on your Google Sheets and write it as soon as you spend it. It takes not even 30 seconds, and then all the rest of the work is just done for you. So please have a look, try this out and see if it actually helps you. Leave your comments below and subscribe to my channel for more.